In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, May 31st. North Korea fails to launch into space its first spy satellite early this morning and vows a second attempt in the near future, while South Korea denounces the attempts as grave violations of UN Security Council resolutions. And the international community raises much concern over North Korea's latest launch, underscoring its disruption of regional stability and its rampant violation of UN resolutions. Meanwhile, South Korea's team of experts say further analysis is necessary to verify the safety of Japan's planned discharge of radioactive wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean starting this summer. We start here on the Korean Peninsula with news of North Korea's failed attempt to place its first spy satellite into orbit. South Korea, for its part, has strongly condemned the latest launch. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-sung reports.
North Korea launched a rocket carrying a satellite on Wednesday, according to South Korean military sources.
Our military detected what North Korea claimed to be a space launch vehicle traveling in a southward direction from the area of Dongchang-ri in North Pyongan province at around 6:29 a.m.
The launch, North Korea's seventh attempt at launching a satellite but the first in over 7 years, has escalated regional tensions. Military analysis says the rocket fell into the West Sea around 200 kilometers west of South Korea's Cheongdo Island. Military authorities on Wednesday morning said they are currently recovering what appears to be debris from the West Sea for further examination. However, according to North Korean state media, the Korean Central News Agency, the rocket launch was a failure. It reported that the projectile dropped into the West Sea after losing momentum due to an abnormal flight. The botched launch did rattle South Korea, however. On Pyeongdo Island, an island off South Korea's west coast and located below the rocket's flight path, residents were quickly ushered into shelters as public speakers blasted out warnings for a solid 20 minutes. The launch also prompted officials to send emergency evacuation messages through text and public speakers all over the capital city, Seoul, as they initially thought that debris may fall from the sky. The government has since withdrawn the warning, assuring citizens that the failed rocket launch does not pose a risk. North Korea had previously notified the International Maritime Organization of its intent to launch the reconnaissance satellite between May 31st and June 11th, adhering to their schedule with this recent launch. The KCNA said that North Korea is currently analyzing what went wrong and would launch another rocket in the near future. The situation triggered an emergency meeting of the National Security Council's Standing Committee, led by National Security Advisor Cho Tae-yong, to address North Korea's long-range ballistic missile launch under the pretext of a so-called satellite, as stated in an official release. The National Security Council has decried the rocket launch as a severe breach of UN Security Council resolutions and a potent provocation that threatens peace not only on the Korean Peninsula, but also potentially extending to a wider region. These comments were echoed by the presidential office in an official statement issued on Wednesday. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
And in related news, South Korea's allies, including neighboring Japan and the US, were quick to denounce North Korea's rocket launch. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pei Eun-ji covers their response.
After North Korea launched what it claimed was a space launch vehicle, Japan briefly issued a rare emergency alert for Okinawa, urging residents to immediately take shelter inside a building or underground. The warning, issued at around 6:30 a.m., was lifted around 30 minutes later, after Japan's Coast Guard said the projectile was believed to have fallen into the sea.
Due to the possibility that it could fall inside or fly over our country's territory, a J alert was swiftly enacted and information shared with the public.
The Japanese government spokesperson also said Japan has lodged a complaint against North Korea through diplomatic channels in Beijing. He added that Pyongyang's continued actions threaten the safety and security of the country and the international community. Following the launch, the White House also said that it condemned the North Korean space launch, which it says uses ballistic missile technology. White House National Security Council spokesperson Adam Hodge said in a statement that U.S. President Joe Biden and his national security team are assessing the situation in close coordination with their allies and partners. Meanwhile, the United Nations also warned North Korea that any launch using ballistic missile technology would violate UN Security Council resolutions. In the statement, the UN urged Pyongyang to resume diplomatic efforts towards sustainable peace and complete and verifiable denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. 배은지, Arirang News.
So, what are the broader implications of North Korea's space ambitions at this particular point in time? Our Lee Kyung-won answers that question.
Launching its first reconnaissance satellite is key to North Korea's 5-year military advancement plan rolled out in 2021 with the aim of having it ready by April this year. Sending a satellite into orbit requires a long-range space rocket. While space development is an open race for many countries, this is not the case for North Korea. Because the required rocket involves long-range missile technology and the regime is banned from using it under UN Security Council resolutions, regardless of the purpose. Despite warnings from the international community, North Korea has been accelerating its militarization of space. Earlier in May, leader Kim Jong-un inspected the satellite and gave the go-ahead for quote, future action plan, with the launch date finalized to be between May 31st and June 11th. Affecting the timing, the weather factors to avoid seasonal monsoon rains or typhoons, but also the North's competitive spirit against the South.
North Korea desperately wants to be ahead of South Korea when it comes to satellite launch capability. And South Korea just put a satellite, 7 of them in fact, into orbit about a week ago.
But at the core of Pyongyang's planning is the military component. Since 1998, North Korea has attempted 6 satellite launches. Just 2 entered orbit, only to fail to communicate with the ground. If this one succeeds, the regime could ramp up its monitoring and precision strike capability against South Korea and the U.S. But experts say there's only so much it could do with that one satellite in its early stage of development.
The satellite seems to be capable of creating only low-resolution images, which will be difficult to identify in the case of rain or darkness. The regime also lacks expertise and infrastructure to analyze the received data.
Plus, more than one satellite is needed to create a comprehensive image of a target. That said, experts say this launch could pave the way for more to come, at which point the North could expand its data analysis and advance the capability of its satellites. Young-eun, Arirang News.
A UN committee has highlighted the dire plight of North Korean female defectors in China, where they reportedly face human trafficking. Our Isingjae's details.
The United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women released a report on Tuesday after a review of women's rights in China. The report pointed out the human rights violations that North Korean women refugees face, including human trafficking and forced marriages. The UN organization called on China to not repatriate any North Korean refugees who defect from the North, as North Korean women are being deprived of their rights to give birth because children born in China cannot register their birth locally without exposing the mother to the risk of being deported to North Korea. It also called for North Korean women and girls who have been victims of human trafficking to be given basic social services, such as temporary residence permits, medical and education services, alternative income opportunities, and rehabilitation programs without being punished for violating immigration laws. In response to the report, China did not acknowledge the issue of human rights violations, stating that most of the North Korean women who come to China come to make money, and it's difficult to consider that as human trafficking. The United Nations defines human trafficking as not only the buying and selling of people as goods, but also the act of taking people under the pretext of employment and preventing them from moving freely by exploiting their vulnerable position. The latest CEDAW report marks the first time the UN organization publicized the human rights issue of North Korean refugee women through a human rights review targeting China and not North Korea. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In Jeju Island, defense authorities are hosting an anti-proliferation maritime exercise with the US, Japan and Australia on this Wednesday. The exercise has been scaled back owing to adverse weather conditions, and it comes as part of the Proliferation Security Initiative that kicked off on Tuesday to curb the spread of weapons of mass destruction. The exercise involves maritime interception and seizure operations, as well as the operation of vessels on a command post exercise using computer simulations. This time, only the South Korean Navy and Coast Guard ships are anchoring at the Jeju Civil Military Complex port for on-site training such as boarding and inspection. Korea's inaugural summit with Pacific Island nations earlier this week sought to set the bilateral framework for stability, that is, and prosperity in the Pacific region. That being said, our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young covers the response of pundits here regarding the government's efforts.
South Korea is stepping up as a stabilizing force for peace and development, establishing stronger relations with Pacific Island countries amid compounding threats to a free and rules-based order in the region. Alongside Seoul's first ever multilateral summit with all 18 leaders of the Pacific Island foreign nations, President Yoon Suk-yeol held separate meetings with 10 heads of government. Their talks focused on climate, healthcare, infrastructure and development assistance as key areas of cooperation, as extreme climate events threaten the health of Pacific Islanders and their economic and social development. Yoon's engagement with the islands is in line with his Indo-Pacific strategy.
I think it reflects the more values-based agenda that the Yoon administration is trying to pursue to preserve a free and open regional order, and such as hosting the Summit for Democracy this year, and now with the Pacific Islands leaders visiting Korea for the first time. It's to show that Korea can step up and play a more active role in providing regional public goods.
Preserving a free and liberal order in the region and protecting maritime routes is vital to Seoul's national and economic security interests as it seeks multilateral efforts to deter a nuclear North Korea and bolster trade relations as a heavily export-dependent nation. This calls for more expansive partnerships.
The Pacific Island nations are obviously very strategically important, both geographically and in the context of their representation in the United Nations. I think it's very important that the Western allies combine to help these island nations. And I think sometimes that it's a little bit risky for those island nations to be seen as being too dependent on aid from the United States.
With the US and China vying for influence over Indo-Pacific countries, South Korea is being welcomed as a balanced partner to the islands and other neighbors in the region.
Middle powers have limited resources. And if you have limited resources, the more you do, the less effectively you do each item. And the Pacific region has always come last in South Korea's diplomatic efforts. I'm hoping what we're seeing here is the first step in bringing the Pacific region up to a higher level in Korea's diplomacy.
But leveraging its engagement for middle power diplomacy will take long-term and consistent effort as Seoul itself continues to juggle with the ever-changing and ever-complex dynamics of geopolitics. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
South Korea's team of experts who were recently in Japan for an on-site survey of facilities in Fukushima say further analysis is needed, that is, to verify the safety of Tokyo's planned discharge of radioactive wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean starting this summer. Speaking at a briefing here on this Wednesday, the head of the team, Yugo-ki, said while meaningful progress had been made in terms of a scientific and technological review of the relevant facilities, more analysis is necessary for an accurate assessment of the facility's performance adequacy and potential for long-term operation. That being said, you added plans for additional efforts on the matter with Japanese authorities. In other news, the latest monthly figures for Korea's economy show industrial activity and retail sales losing ground. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korea's industrial production fell in April. Data released by Statistics Korea shows that last month's industrial production was down 1.4% compared to the month before. It had risen in the 2 previous months, and the fall in April was the biggest on-month drop in 14 months. Statistics Korea attributed the decline to lower production in the manufacturing and services sector.
The overall industrial production fell compared to the previous month due to a drop in production in the mining and manufacturing and the services industries.
Production in mining and manufacturing industries fell by a combined 1.2% compared to the previous month, amid a drop of almost 7% in the production of machinery, such as semiconductor equipment. A drop in exports of chips and chemical products caused the manufacturing industry's inventory to shipment ratio to jump by 13.2 percentage points on month to hit 130.4%, the highest rate on record. Production and service industries also fell by 0.3%, mainly due to a drop in the wholesale and retail sectors. Retail sales, a gauge of consumer demand, were down 2.3% compared to the previous month, largely due to the drop in clothing sales led by the base effect of February's spike in clothing demand.
Retail sales were also down from the previous month as sales of apparel, food and groceries dropped.
That's the second consecutive month that retail sales saw an on-month decline and the largest drop since November last year. Facility investment, however, edged up slightly 0.9% from a month earlier on increased investment in transportation equipment such as airplanes. The Finance Ministry announced on the same day that it will focus on revitalizing the nation's exports, investments, and domestic demand through measures that include monitoring overseas and domestic markets in real time. 이수진, Arirang News.
On a light note now, K-pop superstar BTS marks its 10th anniversary this year, and in light of this event, the group is collaborating with the capital city in hosting the 2023 BTS Festa starting today until mid-June. The festa includes celebrations and related activities at landmarks across Seoul with City Hall, Namsan Tower, Dongdaemun Design Plaza, and the World Cup Bridge lit up in purple, the BTS color. Yeouido Hangang Park will bring the festa to a close on the 17th of June with a grand display of fireworks. Technology transfer in the context of the space industry here is expected to promote commercial activity, boost economic growth and enhance opportunities for greater success up ahead, especially amid Nuri's successful third launch. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Behind the successful launch of Nuri is the participation of Hanwha Aerospace, which became the first private company to take part in the project. The involvement comes as space industries in other countries are ready to enter the so-called new space era, led by private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin.
The country is now transferring technology to the private sector and letting it supervise the integration of such launch vehicles. This is because when the domestic industry weakens, it is difficult for even the national-led space development to progress.
3 more launches of the Nuri rocket will be carried out between now and 2027, with Hanwha Aerospace taking charge. Throughout the process, private firms will take on the responsibility of manufacturing the Korean space launch vehicles while aiming to improve their manufacturing skills. Following the third launch of Nuri, South Korea's space industry as well as other industries are expected to see growth.
The aerospace industry encompasses all industries related to space exploration, such as the construction and operation of launch vehicles and satellites, as well as the development and supply of satellite services, therefore having significant added economic value.
As seen in the war in Ukraine, in emergency situations, satellite communication, such as that provided by SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet service, is important. In fact, the South Korean government is planning to launch 80 satellites by 2030. With increasing demand for satellites, semiconductor and communication service sectors are expected to grow, along with advancements in technologies for monitoring climate and observing terrain. Based on a forecast of the global market reaching $1 trillion by 2040, the government hopes to expand South Korea's share in the global space market to 10% by 2045. Starting this year, the government is planning to invest 2 trillion won or roughly $1.5 billion in developing a next-generation launch vehicle that is even more advanced than Nuri. It'll be used to launch a lunar lander in 2032. The Yoon administration is also working on establishing a National Aeronautics Administration, or a Korean version of NASA, in order to lead the country's space economy. 신하영, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Russia, drone attacks on Tuesday local time hit buildings in the capital, Moscow. According to reports, the attacks injured 2 people and damaged at least 3 residential buildings. Russia has blamed Ukraine for the strikes. President Vladimir Putin said the attack was an attempt by Ukraine to frighten Russians. He added that it is a clear sign of terrorist activity. But Ukraine has denied any involvement. For its part, Ukraine has been hit by 17 airstrikes this month, including one on the capital of Kyiv on Monday, which killed at least 1 person. Disgraced Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence. Holmes on Tuesday local time entered a federal Texas prison after her request to remain free on bail while appealing her conviction was rejected. The 39-year-old was convicted on 4 felony counts of fraud and conspiracy in January last year. This because she falsely claimed her company had technology capable of detecting conditions such as diabetes using just a few drops of blood. The hype saw Theranos raise billions in funding from investors. But the technology never worked, and the Silicon Valley-based company closed its doors in 2018. Earlier this month, a U.S. judge also ordered that Holmes and her ex-partner Ramesh Balwani pay $452 million to the victims. Shifting to the tech space, dozens of AI experts and tech leaders, including the heads of OpenAI and Google DeepMind, have warned that artificial intelligence could lead to humanity's extinction. According to a statement published by the Center for AI Safety on Tuesday, the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority and needs to be reduced. The statement also outlined ways that AI could threaten humanity, including weaponizing AI to make chemical weapons and destabilizing society through generated misinformation. But other experts say fears of extinction due to AI are overblown and unrealistic. And finally, the world's only known white panda has been caught on camera. The bear was spotted in China's Sichuan province in the Wolong National Nature Reserve. Footage shows the bear approaching a calm mother panda and her cub, whom experts believe may be part of its family. The white panda was first discovered in April 2019. Experts have concluded that it is an albino due to its red eyes and lack of black spots. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It looks to be a repeat of yesterday's weather conditions under brighter skies. Western parts of the country are seeing another big hike in the afternoon highs. East Coast regions are having breezier afternoon again, but southeast regions, including Daegu, should notice warmer highs compared to yesterday. Now, skies are much sunnier today. Other than the capital region, most parts will be under lots of sunshine all through the afternoon, boosting UV rays to very high levels during the day. Meanwhile, Jeju Island is forecast to see 5 to 20 millimeters of more rain this afternoon with breezy afternoon highs. The rest of the country is having highs that are 2 to 4 degrees higher today. The air quality will be normal to good nationwide all day. Now, those in the south need to brace for another band of rain that's in the forecast from Jeju and the south coast tomorrow morning, which will expand to the rest of the southern regions by the afternoon and possibly continue into Friday morning. Now, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Well, those are the headlines at this hour, but we have our panel session coming up right after this break, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.